Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
Now you're welcome back. So we're turning to the weekend's GAA. Yesterday we had Armagh beat Donegal at Clones. Cork came through against Limerick at Porky Queeve. And then on Saturday, doubleheader at Croke Park in front of a poor crowd, it must be said. We were just talking about that. Mayo struggled all day against Kildare, came through in the last 10 minutes or so. Before that, Clare, they were 5 points down with 3 minutes of normal time, and then they scored 1-3 to break Roscommon Hearts. So we had our quarter-final draw this morning. It goes as follows. On one side of the draw, we will have Kerry against Mayo. We will have Cork against Dublin, winners of those two games in the semi-final. And then the other side of the draw, we have four teams now eyeing up the very real prospect of an All-Ireland final. Galway will play Armagh, who beat Donegal yesterday. And then the Ulster champions Derry will take on Clare. Very happy to say Billy Joe Padden is with us on the line. Billy Joe, great to have you on.
Thanks, Joe.
A couple of texts in, a few people saying Colin Collins. Can we start with Colin Collins? I mean, he's the longest serving inter-county manager in the country. I think McGeaney, same year as him, but maybe a few months afterwards. And we spoke to Colin Collins late last year, and he was recounting his experience of the COVID season, and he was pretty much ready to walk away at that stage. He felt that even he himself hadn't done a great job during COVID, and it was the players and those around him who convinced him to stay at it. And you can see why, because everything Collins does is low-key, it's for the team, and quarter-final, much deserved.
Definitely. I think from his personality, and I've never met the man, but just from seeing him, the way he is with his players on TV screens, or when you're at a match and away from him, the way he is with the media, he's kind of unassuming and humble in everything he does. But it's obvious there that he deals with his players the right way, because, but you know, for sure, the one thing you cannot doubt over these last number of years is that they give everything they can for him, and not just their county. You know, we're all proud to play for our county when you get the opportunity, but you still have to play for a person that you believe in. And it's absolutely clear that those Clare players believe in him, and he's treating them the right way, and they don't want to let him down. And he said it himself in the interview afterwards with Sky Sports that he never doubted that they'd keep fighting. And that's the case, and they did keep fighting. And not only that, when the opportunity came to take that chance, they took it. And that goes down to good coaching and good mental preparation. So he's obviously ticking a lot of boxes in terms of being a high-quality manager.
Let's turn to Clones. Donegal, 18 points, Armagh 3-17. That's the headline scoreline from the weekend, 8 weeks after Donegal had beaten Armagh. I don't think many anticipated Armagh winning this game at a complete canter and running up the last 15 minutes with the result already decided. This was extraordinary.
Yes, and if you go into the second quarter of the game, after the outstanding goal that Rory Grugan scored, and it was fantastic from a throw-in move, great kick in by Rian O'Neill, Rory Grugan attacks the ball, and then he's a beautiful left foot. He actually placed it gently nearly into the top corner, wonderful finish. But after that, Donegal were playing really, really well. Michael Murphy in at the edge of the square, while he wasn't having an impact himself, it seemed to empower some of the forwards out the field, and their shooting they were much more eager to shoot, and they were accurate, and they went into a lead. But I didn't think the kick-outs and the kick-out strategy and the errors they made in that regard, then the black card and how that totally, it muddled everything for Donegal. But that was just the end that Armagh needed, because after that they were absolutely flawless throughout the rest of the game. Their usual aggressive selves, they were physical around the middle of the field, and then you saw the quality that Rian O'Neill and Rory Grugan and players like that have. Soupy Campbell didn't have a great start to the game, but he's persistent, believes in his own ability, kept going, kept creating things, and they're a team now that's playing with a lot of energy, a lot of confidence, and they fully deserve their win.
If there is that decisive period in the game, it probably is, as you said, around Patton's black card and the penalty. So both of those moments come courtesy of short kick-outs being pressurised high up. We don't see that from every team. You know, we're just lauding Clare, for instance. Clare don't really get in your faces and try and steal short kick-outs. They drop back to a certain point and they say, well, come and break us down from there. It's hard not to look at Armagh's approach and think, well, that's the way to do it. Why would you give a foothold to any team?
To Armagh's credit, and they do deserve credit for leaving forwards high up the field to apply that pressure, and not only that, when the mistake is made, to be able to, I suppose, maximise that and take that opportunity. Whereas from Donegal's point of view, when they look back at these videos, more often than not, the ball got to where it was intended to go. It was a handling error by the defender, lets the forward in. But it is, to speak on your point, it is brave by Armagh, because a couple of times earlier in the game, Padden went over the top with that brilliant kick out and put Donegal in a really good attacking position. So it is about risk reward, and definitely in this situation, Armagh took the risk and got the rewards, and that was absolutely huge for them. And I think sometimes when you find yourself in the situation that Armagh do, where they went over to Ballybuffet, it was a really timid performance. They would have been terribly disappointed with the way they played, kind of were well beaten with 20 minutes to go in that game. And I think they went into the game last week against Tyrone thinking, we're going to give this a lash. We want to play front football. That suits us. We want to get back to Croke Park. One of the most exciting performances of this season was Armagh's performance against Dublin in Croke Park, where they played on the front foot, played attacking football, actually kicked the ball in. So they decided that's what they're going to do. And to do that, you have to put pressure on the opposition kick out and to play that sort of way. I don't think Armagh are the sort of team that can sit back for 25 minutes and not concede a free save. They're too eager to get on the ball. They'd be too impatient and would be guilty of impatience and giving away frees. So they want to play the game in the opposition's half. They want to be able to move the ball quickly into the full forward line. So I think that was their approach the last two games, and that's to McGeeney's credit.
And I'm sure you've been watching this team under McGeeney for the last 7 years now. Has there been a moment you could pinpoint where he changed tack, or has he always had them playing this kind of football?
They've always played this kind of football, or tried to play this kind of football. The problem has been that there are against some opponents, particularly in Ulster, there are very limited opportunities when teams get 4, 5, 6 weeks to prepare for you, and they sit back in their shell, and Armagh would struggle to break them down because they wouldn't always show that patience. And they want to have those counter-attacking opportunities where Rian O'Neill maybe gets the ball out the field for a long-range shot, or you're playing a pass in with Soupy Campbell running directly at somebody, or Rory Grugan really wants to play that crossfield diagonal into somebody in the forward, whether it's Aidan Nugent or somebody in there, or Turbot when he came on from Clonerne. That's the sort of football they want to play, and you're just not allowed to play that football in Ulster very often. Like in the qualifiers, sometimes things can be a bit more off script, and that has suited them. I suppose the one thing that stands out, and a lot of Armagh supporters, what's exciting them since yesterday's result basically is it's the first time in Championship that they've put two consistently good performances back to back and got two big wins. And that's the big thing. That's the big takeaway from all this. And that's the big difference maybe with some other good performances in the earlier part of McGeeney's reign. Yeah,
it was interesting. Rian O'Neill made the exact point when it was put to him that this was, wonderful. And he was always, look, we're not getting carried away. It's literally the first time we've put two performances back to back. On Donegal then, I don't know, perhaps it's age profile, and we're 10 years on from that All-Ireland team, and Michael Murphy has a few grey hairs now, and McBrearty is not so young anymore, or I guess this applies to Declan Bonner's tenure as well. So I don't know if it's age or if it's just the manner of the last 10-15 minutes which were so bereft of hope because the thing had unravelled and it was over. But it just felt like an end of era day for that team, that decade that we might be talking about 2022 as a line in the sand. And who knows, I don't know Bonner's intentions, I don't know Murphy's intentions or McBrearty's intentions, but it did just feel like it's not going to happen for this group who've been so built up at the start of several seasons over the last number of years.
I think it's more down to just general approach and game strategy. I think what you saw in that last 15 minutes was not a team that didn't really believe in what they were doing and didn't believe that it would get them the outcome that they needed in terms of getting that win. I think that, as I said, they started well in that second quarter. They were pretty good until the goalkeeping errors. But I think that there's more football in Murphy and McBrearty, and I think that some of their young players have a whole lot of talent. You're talking about, the O'Donnell lads, Langan, Jason McGee, Owen Ban Gallagher, dynamic half-back attacks out of that area. There's still a lot of football in Ryan McHugh. I think that they will benefit from a more attacking approach. They have to change their attack a little bit. They can't just be this team. No, I don't think any team can be this team that just sits back into a shell and hopes to get those 7 or 8 key counter-attacking moments where you'll run up the field and get the scores, particularly Donegal and the way they've been playing, because their counter-attack has been totally reliant on running the ball. If your counter-attack has a mixed game, has an element of it where you've somebody in the middle of the field that has confidence to play a cross-field ball, or even somebody that will kick it 40 yards out of defence, and you've got yourself in behind 4 or 5 of the opposition defenders. Donegal haven't done that. It's all been about the running game, and even in a counter-attacking game, that hasn't been good enough. They've got to find other ways of getting scores. And but I still think there's a lot of good young footballers there that have a lot of football left in them, and it remains to be seen what Declan Bonner will do. But I do think they need to change their approach.
Yes, and maybe that change in approach re-energises even the elder statesman. It did seem, by the way, as an odd decision to take off McBrearty of all players, and he wasn't happy to come off, which suggests he wasn't injured.
Yeah, well, I think that whole look, it's a very unique situation, and you're on the line and you have to decide what you're going to do. I think if you had confidence in an outfield player surviving 10 minutes in goals, that you would do that and save yourself the substitutions that you wasted. I think McBrearty doesn't want to come off in that situation. If they had an outfield player that could have gone in there and just had the kicking ability to kick it 60 yards each time off the kicking tee, which I think there should be plenty of players that will be able to do that, and hope that you survive. Well, then you save substitutions. Whereas I think in some ways what they did sent a message to their bench. Okay, well, we've just cut our substitutions basically in half, and we don't really believe in what's going to come off the bench that's going to save this game. And I think it sent out the wrong mental message to the whole squad.
Mayo Kildare, then Croke Park doubleheader, paltry crowd. I mean, there's Mayo are just the oddest team in the country by just some distance. And you go right back to the 06 semi-final Dublin, for instance, this propensity to win games that they probably don't deserve to win or don't look like winning, bar All-Ireland finals, is parody of itself at this stage. I would put it to you, the first 35 minutes on Mayo's part, that's the worst 35 minutes they've produced in maybe 15 years. I don't know, do you? I was going to say maybe the 06 All-Ireland final against Kerry, but that was more down to Kerry being brilliant as well. Just in terms of the basics, the turnovers, the shots, the mistakes, I can't think of Mayo playing a worse 35 minutes in decade plus.
Well, to be honest with you, the 30 minutes of the second half against Galway this year, the championship, was pretty horrific as well.
Well, that's pretty worrying then if we're in the same season.
Yeah, well, it definitely is, and I would say that I don't like comparing it to other poor performances, but there was probably 55 minutes of the game the last day against Kildare, which was not good.
Yeah,
and not anywhere near the standards that they would normally set for themselves. I think James Horan was absolutely honest in his post-match interview when he said that the levels of intensity, the levels of work rate, coordination, just attitude were totally way off the pace, and that's not something that you expect from Mayo. Even when they're not going well, you always get the feeling that they're grinding, they're trying, and they're going through that, but it was just so off the pace. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that you're missing Ryan O'Donoghue. Cillian O'Connor is having to play with coming back from an injury where he hasn't a lot of football under his belt. There's rumours that he can't really train during the week. So, what's his conditioning levels like? Tommy Conroy is obviously a huge miss. Many of the other forwards that are getting opportunities are not playing well. Manny Ruan, who's been a big player for me over the last 2 seasons, is not playing well at the minute. So, Diarmuid O'Connor, while working hard, not really getting on the end of stuff. Jason Doherty struggling to come back from injuries as well. Conor Loftus struggled to get into the game the last day. So, you have an attacking unit that's not really functioning.
No.
And you have that leads you in a situation where you're totally reliant on Lee Keegan, Owen McLaughlin, Oisin Mullen doing something for you. And to be honest with you, those lads played well in the first half and kind of kept Mayo in the game and continued that strong performance into the second half. And Mayo got a little help coming off the bench. And that help coming off the bench, it brought Diarmuid O'Connor into the game, brought Conor Loftus into the game while he was there, and Manny Ruan finished the game stronger than he started it. But at the same time, Kildare, when I look back and think Mayo actually come out and win this game, Kildare really will be kicking themselves in the way they finished the last 20 minutes of that game, because up to that point it was a dramatic turnaround in their level of intensity compared to what they showed in the Leinster final. And I'd probably put as much down to Mayo winning this game last Saturday on Kildare's kind of running out of gas and lack of know-how in that situation of a game, as much as Mayo's improved play.
Yeah, it really opened up in the second half. It gathered pace, it gathered a certain wildness. Cynical or otherwise, Kildare needed to slow the thing down again, make it stop-start again, and then they'll reflect on some very poor missed chances as well and wides, and there was a great save as well. On Kildare, so much improved in the Leinster final, and there was an intensity in their tackling. I don't know how many turnovers, particularly in the first, as you said, 55 minutes or so, they came away with, which was very impressive. But on this complete 180, philosophically say, where they concede the 5 goals against Dublin, all season they've had very good attack and been a little bit open at the back, has been the general sense of Kildare. How would you feel as a player if your management team have this philosophy for so long, have the Dublin match, and then go 15 men behind the ball? I mean, it's not even we'll leave Flynn and another up. I mean, it's 15 men behind the ball. We are Donegal in 2011 here. That is what we're going for. I mean, do you think players look at management when they do that and wonder, like, how are we here after 5-6 months of work and now we're doing this complete 180? Or do you suspect, fair enough, they understand the rationale?
Well, it depends on the levels of communication between the management team and the group. If the whole idea around staying, positive and playing really attack-minded football and taking those risks was on the basis that you're going to win a Leinster title in Croke Park, anything you're going to do after that is going to be in Croke Park, and those big wide open spaces will suit you in terms of creating chances. That's true to an extent. But you can't concede the amount of chances that Kildare have been shipping. Even in the league game against Mayo, I think it was playing Carrick-Shannon earlier on, it was like neither team could defend that day, and it could have been 5 goals each in that situation. So there were hints that this was going to be a big problem throughout the league. And even that game against Dublin in Newbridge, there were a lot of Dublin missed opportunities there that could have ended in a very different result. So I think that the players, if they have a question, they'll say, well, look, we should have made this decision earlier.
Even that's the point, Jen. And maybe that's the reason they run out of gas. You get better at doing it, you get more efficient at doing it. I mean, why wait till 3 weeks before the Mayo game to actually have this road to Damascus moment?
Completely. And that the writing was on the wall for that earlier in the season, and that change should have been made. But I suppose if you want to put a positive spin on what happened the last day for Kildare, is that those players themselves and the management team can point to that 55, 60 minutes against Mayo and say, in terms of intensity, in terms of physicality, in terms of level of commitment, in terms of, I suppose, communication and playing for each other, that's your marker.
Yeah.
That you can't go below that. You have to hit that again, and that has to be our starting point for whatever game plan you play next season. But I think, any of these teams, unless you're confident that you can go away, and none of the teams out there are, not even Dublin at their absolute all-time ever best 3 or 4 seasons ago, we're going into games with that level of, I suppose, taking that level of risk to play an attacking game plan. You have to be able to defend with 13 and 14 men at times in each game. And that, in some ways, that has to be your starting point. That has to be your foundation that you develop early in the league, and then you tweak that as you go along, in terms of you might have to sit back into that shell when things aren't going well for 10 minutes in the game. When things aren't going well, you can release a few more bodies to be attack-minded. Yeah,
to be fair, it gives Kildare something to build on. It's such a pity for them now that that's it for basically 7 months, and they'll have to dust off the copy of this tape and pick it up and go again. But I suppose that's the nature of things. On Mayo, and this is not a new point, so against that kind of blanket approach and maybe echoes of the Galway game, so there seemed to be just this feature of Mayo possession in their own half, very slow. Kildare players are retreating, and there are still Kildare players in the Mayo half, but they're retreating, and they're going to get to a point where it's all 15 men inside, say, the 65-metre line. Mayo refuse at any of those moments to ever kick a ball. Like, you wonder what the 2 men inside are doing, because they're not even making runs. It's like they know, if I make a run, I'm not going to get the ball here. And then Kildare get in their shape, and Mayo find that type of defence, as any laws of physics applied, any team would, very difficult to break down. And you just kind of think, like, I didn't understand it. You're watching it and you're like, what, so slow, letting Kildare get back, and then you find this hard to break down, and it's Hail Mary stuff in the end from Oisin Mullen and others. Can you explain this to me? Like, I was thinking, even stick in Aidan O'Shea wasn't having a good game. Stick in O'Shea and lob a few into him. Look at what Armagh did in the first minute against Donegal. But it's this one-dimensional approach to a team that wants to get back and defend.
It was obvious to me in the Monaghan game that Mayo had worked on playing into a blanket defence, and that the way they had spaced out their whole attack, the way they'd kept depth in their full forward line. Jack Carney is a very inexperienced player, plays a lot of his football in midfield in the half forward line, but he's been asked to do a job in the full forward line. So, as a result of the injuries that Mayo have, and he stayed very in close to the goal, great depth in on the penalty spot, and that stretched the field in McHale Park as much as they could. There was none of that in Croke Park in those open stages. They didn't move the ball quickly enough from left to right to try and outflank the Kildare defence. And anytime they did go and the ball carrier did go, and even if they had support, the ball handling was so poor that it was lost in a tackle, dropped down, and picked up by a Kildare player, and they were away on a counter-attack. But I do agree with you to a certain extent. You had Jack Carney in there and James Carr. Now, both of those players are decent ball winners. Jack Carney won a great ball in the first half that was a shot from James Carr that went up in the air, and Jack Carney showed brilliant hands to catch it clean and lay it off to McLaughlin. I think that might have been the one that the save that then resulted, that went over the bar. And earlier on in the game, even though he missed, James Carr made a really good mark, but missed the subsequent chance off his left foot. And those chances are there. So look, you're saying you kick the ball in twice and you got a score out of it, and another scoring opportunities you should have made a better use of. So if you'd have come away from that first half and said, well, you kick 7 or 8 balls in, that might have turned out to maybe 4 scores if things are going well. And I would have been saying that that's the approach you should take against a blanket defence like that. It can never be your plan A. It can never be your plan A to kick the ball in there, because too much of it will just be broken down and you'll be countered against. So you've got to spread out, space the field much better. Your ball handling out the field has to be much sharper, much quicker. You've got to move it from left to right quicker to try and put somebody in on the right wing with an outside shot. And even if that's better, if your movement out there is better, you might suck a sweeper out of it, and then that might open it up for those 7 or 8 times that the longer ball is on. But if your ball movement isn't good enough, and you don't have the confidence to kick the ball in, well, then that's a problem. And the other thing I say about Mayo and kicking the ball in, it's different if you Rory Grugan out the field with a beautiful left foot that can, make a ball hang in the corner. Or I think there was another one over the weekend in the other game. I can't remember at the minute now who it was. I think it was actually maybe for Kildare and Flynn.
Flynn got one.
Yeah, where he comes and makes like an Aussie Rules style, leap and catch. You have to have the players out the field that's what they're good at. If you look at the Mayo midfielders and the Mayo half-back line, McLaughlin is a runner. Paddy Durkin is a runner. Stephen Cohen's going to sit back and defend. Aidan O'Shea doesn't have that kicking ability. Matty Ruan doesn't have that kicking ability. You're probably reliant on Diarmuid O'Connor finding himself in a wide situation. He's the player that has that long diagonal ball pass. They just don't have that many options of players to play that ball.
I mean, you'd be so tempted to just completely write them off, but of course you can't, because it's Mayo. And so we'll preview the Kerry Mayo game again, and this is the thing, like, that Kerry will still be thinking we're untested coming into this, and Mayo certainly have fitness if nothing else at the moment. Just one quick question, and literally 30 seconds if you can. Where are you on the playing those games on Saturday at Croke Park debate? We were talking about it on the news round, and we were saying 7 of the Clare team had never played at Croke Park before, so we can see how they, as players, might love to be there, but there are many arguments against.
It's an argument that the decision is for the GAA, and there's no doubt if you ask the players, and more often than not, Mayo were delighted the game was at Croke Park. They're so familiar with the surroundings. If you're Roscommon or Clare or even Kildare, you can see the psychological effect of getting hammered by Dublin. They would have much preferred going back and having a positive experience in Croke Park if they were able to hold out for the win against Mayo. So the players, I think, would enjoy playing at Croke Park and recognise if you're going to win the big games, that's the place where you'll have to win them. I think it's a totally different thing for supporters when you consider the costs, the cost of living crisis that we're in. The GAA has to make those decisions. And not only to take those things, and they should be a major consideration in what the GAA are considering when they're fixing games, but just the fact that the atmosphere, and I hate to use the word, but the product, whether you're at the game or whether you're watching on television, sometimes the atmosphere in provincial grounds, the atmosphere in Clonus looked really good yesterday for Armagh. So that has to be a consideration as well.
Okay, Billy Joe Padden, thanks so much, Billy Joe. Cheers.
You're welcome, Joe.